Hi, welcome to the training webinar. I'm Dale Franks, and it's 2025. We are back from our holiday hiatus. Before we begin, there's several things going on here today. I've got a couple of different people coming by, including an exterminator who should be here now. My wife is going to handle that. However, my dog will probably also want to get involved, so you may hear some barking at some point during the day. I apologize for the unprofessionalism, but it is unavoidable. Usually Thursdays, I don't like to have anything going on at the house, so things are nice and calm. One of the nice things about working from home, as we have since 2024, is that it gives me a lot of freedom from having to commute and all of that. One of the downsides is that sometimes household business occurs that would normally be hidden when you work in an office, and unfortunately, it'll be less hidden today. So I apologize ahead of time if you hear some barking. I have all of my doors closed to the office, but I suspect some external sound may bleed through. With that said, let's go to our first webinar of 2025. I have done myself a little bit of a service. I'm trying to figure out how to share my screen. I'm out of practice at doing this. But I have given myself a easier time of it today because I have did not schedule one of the more complex topics. I scheduled form custom tasks, which is one that did not require a lot of prep, and it's one that I'm familiar with. Next week and the week after that, we are going to be covering some more advanced topics, and we're going to get sort of into the weeds and doing a lot of implementation. Today, however, I have a lot to cover in terms of form custom tasks. So I'm not going to be building things from scratch. I've got all of the applications that demonstrate what I would like to demonstrate complete, and we're going to look at those. Previously, I have sort of done this as in little bits and pieces. We've just covered, part of it, and I've built everything from scratch. Today, we're going to try to go through the whole thing. I'm not going to build things from scratch. We're just going to explain what is going on, and we're going to look through the configuration to make it happen. If you want a copy of this Form Custom Tasks project, it includes everything you need to run it on your own system. So let me know via email at dale.franks@bplogix.com. I'll attach a copy of this project, and you can see all of the various forms and timelines and how they're configured if you want to import them onto your own system. But we are going to be talking about primarily the important custom tasks that you will use on a form, or that are related to forms, because this does get a little tricky with some of the stuff that we're going to do. In fact, some of the stuff we're going to do is not going to be handled in the form at all, although what you do in the form is important for determining how these custom tasks run. But we're actually going to run some of these custom tasks from the process timeline and not, in fact, from the form, although they're very closely related to the form data and, in fact, require certain field values to be in a certain state for them to work. And indeed, the first one that we are going to look at is the attach document custom task. Now, you can, in fact, run attach form from a form, or I'm sorry, attach document from a form. But in this case, I'm doing it from the timeline to demonstrate some conditional execution in a timeline as well. What we're actually doing is very simple. We just have a form. We're going to run it. And in this particular case, we have a couple of courses, MG 371, which I believe is Principles of Management, and MG 495, which is the capstone course for business undergraduates for their senior year. And depending on which course you're going to teach, in this case, I basically built this off of my experience as a adjunct professor of business at the university where I was adjunct professor. And these are two of the courses that I taught. And depending on which of these two courses I'm going to teach, for example, if I'm going to teach MG 495 this semester, if I submit this form, what it's going to do is it's going to go out into Process Director and it's going to find the grading rubric for the MG 495 case analysis. And it is, as we see here, going to add that rubric document. It is a Word document. It's going to add that to the form itself. So if, for example, I had students who were going to be taking one of my courses and I selected the course and I submitted it, then it would attach the appropriate rubric for the appropriate course to the form. And when students looked at the form, they would be able to view or download the Microsoft Word document that contained the case analysis rubric for that particular course. And so this gets attached automatically to my document. Of course, once I'm done with the form, I can hit Review Complete and it closes out the form. So how does something like this work? Well, the custom task that we are talking about today, or in this particular section, is the Attach Document custom task. That custom task will take a document from the content list and will automatically attach it to either the form or the process. Like I said, we can run it from the form or the process timeline. In this case, I'm running it from the process timeline. We'll take a look at it here in a second. For this to work at all, there has to be some documents that are actually stored on the system. So I have this folder here called Rubrics. And inside this folder are the two rubrics, the two grading rubrics that I would use to grade the case study or the case analysis in the case of MG 495. And it tells students exactly how their case study or case analysis is going to be graded. So obviously, I would want to provide this to students. Now, I've only added two here. I obviously could have added a whole bunch more. Operations management, I could add practically an unlimited number of those documents, but I've only added two. They're both Word documents. They both exist in the content list. And that's the important thing, that they exist in the content list. The form itself is very simple. I really only have one form field that I care about, and that is this drop down that enables me to select the course. Now, normally, when you put a drop down on a form, you want to fill that drop down either from a business value or from a drop down object or drop down content list object. For purposes of demonstration, I've just done the easy thing and I have manually configured this drop-down control. So if you look over here on the items property for the drop-down control, you can see that I've added in the two documents that I want to add in, or at least the two courses. MG 371 actually has a value of 1. MG 495, which is what we see in the drop-down, has a value of 2. As always, this is not generally the way that we would recommend that you configure a drop-down. Best practice would be to use either a drop-down content list object or to fill the drop-down from a business value of some sort. For ease of demonstration, I've done it this way, and this option is available to you. And look, sometimes it's the simplest way to configure a drop-down. It just comes with the additional burden that if you ever want to change it, you have to change it directly here. And of course, if you configure the items property of a drop-down, it's obviously not reusable in any other form. But I'm certain there are many circumstances where there's a drop-down that is unique to a form, and you're not really going to reuse it anywhere else. So it may be acceptable to just go ahead and configure it the way that I've done here. But this is an important drop-down because it determines which of the custom tasks is going to run. For this custom task, much as we'll see later, assuming we have the time to get to it, because I've got a lot to go through today, but later we'll see sort of something similar in terms of what this field does, or how the custom task is configured. when we look at the manipulate array data custom task. Sometimes you have to use the same custom task multiple times. If all I cared about was a single document that I wanted to attach, and this is often true whenever you're creating something in Process Director, like I'm creating some sort of, HR process, and there needs to be some sort of document filed with an HR complaint or report or whatever. I know what that document is, and I can just automatically include that document on the form. In a case like that, it'd probably be easier to attach the document via a form custom task. So in that case, what I would do is I would just go to the form definition, if it will allow me, there we go, and go to the go to the custom task event mapping tab of the form definition. And then I can just choose the custom task, and I can just have this custom task run on form creation, for example, or on form submission, something that's only going to run once and is only going to attach that one document to the form. Where this gets tricky is if I have a case like I do here, where I have multiple forms that, or multiple documents that I might want to attach to each form. So each form might conceivably have a different document attached to it. In a case like that, it gets a little trickier to do it in the custom task event mapping tab. It's not impossible, but it does get a little bit trickier. Now, in this case, I'm fortunate enough that I have a drop-down control, and I can turn this drop-down control into an event field. And based on that event running, I can then use that to create both of the two custom tasks I need to run. My problem here is that because I have a different form because I have different options, I have different documents, and what document I'm going to attach to the form depends on what I pick in that course dropdown. I can't just run a single custom task. So I've got one of two ways that I can do it, one of which I've configured already, one of which we'll take a quick look at now. So when I go into my documents, now I don't remember which of the one, is it attached document? Yes, in content actions, attached document. So I'm actually going to need this one twice. Content actions, attach document will attach it. They're both going to be tied to the same event, which is my courses dropdown. But I am going to have to configure them separately because I am going to have to configure them with the appropriate document that I want to attach. I'm not going to go through that right here in the interest of time because we have so much stuff to go through today. What I do need to do, though, is set a condition for both of these, because I don't want both of these to run, especially because they both run on the same event name. They both run on courses. I need to have unique conditions to run these. So in this particular case, I need to take that form field value for the courses and I need to evaluate it to see what it is. Now, in this case, because it's a dropdown, the form field, it's not linked to a drop-down object, so I can't do that. So I have to go string 1 because my value for MG371 is 1. And then for the second one, I've got to go courses equals 2. And that'll be my MG495. And now I've basically got, I guess they're mutually exclusive by definition, but I've got conditions that will only run when a specific value is applied. Now, if I had 5 of these documents that could possibly be attached to this form, then I would need to run this custom task 5 different times to figure out which of the 5 different documents I would want to attach. In this case, I've only got 2, but I still have to do it 2 different times. And I have to be very specific and set conditions appropriately so that the custom task that runs whenever the course's drop-down event fires attaches the correct document to the custom task. So I could do it this way, or I could do it on the process timeline. And that was how I chose to do it for this specific example, where I have the very first 2 things that happen on this process timeline are custom task process timeline activities. But I still have to do the correct conditions. So, for this activity, it does need a needed when condition. So again, this is my attach MG 371 custom task. So I need to be able to attach that document. I need to be sure that this activity only runs when the courses field equals 1. Similarly, my attach MG 495 runs if courses equal 2. So no matter how you do it, you're going to have to be sure that you set the appropriate condition to ensure that this custom task only fires based on the value of courses. So if courses is set to 2, then obviously the attach MG 371 task won't run, but this task will. And this is, of course, a custom task process timeline activity. So when we go to the custom task tab, we can look at how this is configured. The attached document configuration is pretty simple. My documents both exist in the content list. Therefore, it makes it very simple for me to just use the content picker. And I can't use the content list path. Well, I suppose I could, but I would have to, fully define the folder path here. So content picker is just easier because it just allows me to pick the document directly. If this task runs, I always want it to attach this document. So I just pick the document out of the object picker. As we saw earlier, it is in my rubrics folder. It's the MG495 case rubric in the case of this particular activity. I've set a group name for it, and I want to attach it to the current process. So it will just attach it to the process timeline automatically whenever the timeline runs. Now, because I'm dealing with attachments here, it's important to remember that we recommend that whenever you place an attachment control on the form, that you attach the document to the process instance or the timeline instance, not to the form instance. Because if you attach the document to the timeline instance, as a process administrator, if you're going in and looking at instances, if everything is attached to the process, and remember, your form instance is also a process attachment, then when I open up the process instance, the process timeline instance, I have access to both the form and to all attachments. It provides me as an administrator with a single place to go to be able to get both the process timeline, the form instance, as well as any document attachments that are attached to it, because everything becomes an attachment of the process timeline instance. Makes your life a little bit easier as a manager or a process manager or system administrator. So this one is a very simple one to do. The MG371 is exactly the same. The only difference between the configuration is that, of course, I grabbed the MG371 case study. Other than that, they're both exactly the same. They both use the content licker. They both go into the rubric group. All I have to do on the form, of course, is to ensure that I have a show attach control and that show attach control actually shows me the appropriate attachments once they're attached. Most of the time when you do attachments, we're kind of used to having a, attach objects control that people will manually upload the objects to, but that's not what we're doing here. We're doing that automatically. So we don't need to provide an attach control, but we do need to provide a show attach control. So in this particular case, the attachment type is attaching it to the process. Attaching it to the process, by the way, is the default in process timeline. There's really only two types of attachment. There's attachment to the form and attachment to the process. Well, I guess three, because there's also case. So forgive me, there is case attachments as well. So there are three now. The two here, workflow and timeline, feel free to ignore those two attachment types. They're still there. They're there largely for legacy purposes. Originally in Process Director, so back in 2008, there was no timeline. There was only the workflow and the form. And so form and workflow were the only two options. And then, of course, in about 2009 or so, 2010, somewhere in there, we added the process timeline, which is our patented process model, uses the Gantt chart. So we added the timeline option. There's really no effective difference between workflow and timeline, except that it does specifically hook up to a workflow and or a process timeline. We thought that might get a little confusing, so we added process. And process, it doesn't matter whether you use a workflow or a process timeline. By the way, don't use workflows. I'll just say that straight up. You should be using timeline, but don't worry about the workflow or timeline options. Use process. Now, they're still here, and they're here because we have customers that we've had for a long time, and they have this big legacy backlog of things that are set to attach to the workflow or attach to the timeline. So we can't really remove it from the product. It's really there for legacy purposes. But 99 times out of 100, what you want to choose is process. And the nice thing about choosing process is it doesn't matter whether you're using workflow or timeline. It will just automatically attach it to whatever process you happen to use. This is also great if you have some sort of weird mixed thing going on where you're using both timelines and workflows. Although, again, this is for legacy customers. If you're building something new, don't use workflow. By the way, we haven't updated workflow other than to do necessary bug fixes since version 4.5. We haven't touched workflow since 2017. So it really is way behind the times. So another reason why you shouldn't use workflow. But process is the correct option to choose here. Case, of course, we added whenever we went to case management, we added the case management functionality. So really the only three choices you should worry about are form, when you want to attach something to the form, process, which will attach it to whatever process model you use, and then case. The default, as I said, is process, and that's what you should use. So what this particular show attach does, because it only shows from the group name rubric, and because when I configured my attached document custom tasks, I configured them to attach to the document. I'm sorry, to attach the document to the process timeline. I gave them the group name of rubric. This will only show me basically one document ever. It should only show me the document that is in the rubric group. And so therefore, if I had other form group names and I had other attachment controls, those attachments would be separate from the rubrics that get attached. So group names are very, very useful in terms of bifurcating out different documents into different groups to show up in different attachment controls. So there we go. That is the attach document custom task. Now we have to talk about form conversions. There are three primary form conversions. There's PDF conversion, transform to PDF, which is a specialized one, which actually takes form fields from a Process Director form and inserts them into an Adobe PDF fillable form. So it doesn't actually convert anything. It actually just takes your data from one format to another format, and Transform to Word, which I did not mean to click, but Transform to Word, which does something similar. It takes data from a form and puts it in a Word document. These two obviously have some differences in how they operate. But if we're just going to convert something to PDF, then obviously we want to use PDF conversion. This is a pretty simple custom task. Once again, we can convert a form either in the form itself, or we can convert it in the process timeline. Once again, I've chosen to convert it in the process timeline because for the most part, we're going to be, we want to have our document attached to the process timeline. And since I have to have a process timeline to do it, like I said, you could do this all in the form itself. I don't really need a process timeline to make this work. But in most cases, you will have a process timeline. In most cases, like in this, if you're going to convert to PDF, you're going to have a PDF document attachment when the conversion is finished. Best practice is to attach any documents to the process itself. So therefore, I just go ahead and run it in the process too. I just run the conversion in the process as well. There is another thing to think about, and that is when you run the conversion process and how long that conversion process is going to take. You can certainly run it in the form. You can run convert to PDF anywhere that you want to. If you run it in the form though, you throw a button here somewhere that says, convert this to PDF. That'll work just fine. But if you already have a lot of document attachments and you're converting everything into one big PDF, and especially if there's like images that are attached and things like that, clicking that button means that your user is going to be sitting there and waiting for a fairly long time. And so you may want to run the conversions asynchronously, in which case you're almost always going to throw them into a process so that they run in the process, so that the user doesn't have to click a button and then sit there and stare at the screen for 30 seconds or a minute or however long it takes to do, ever more complex conversions to convert their documents. So what I've done is I've just thrown it in the process timeline. So in this particular case, let's just go ahead and run it, and we'll just watch it work like we did the last time. So yeah, let me proceed. I don't want to make any changes. So once again, we'll just run our form. We'll throw some values in here and we'll submit our form. Now, this submission is going to take a minute. So remember how I said you didn't want your user to sit there and watch for 30 seconds or a minute while you did some sort of complex form conversion? Well, the way that I've configured this, that's going to happen anyway. So we need to throw in some caveats about throwing the PDF conversion into the process timeline. So give me a second here for this thing to run. It is taking far longer than I expected it to, and I'm not entirely sure why, but I'm sure that in the fullness of time, it will do the conversion. But we're still sitting here waiting. And the reason why we're sitting here waiting is that I didn't run this asynchronously. And it also happens to be the very first thing that happens after I hit the submit button. So what is actually going on, and also in my particular case, I also have the very next activity assigned to me. So this form is never going to go away. So I'm not really saving myself anything here because the PDF conversion is going to happen, and I'm going to have to sit here and watch the spinny anyway because the very next task is assigned to me. I'm never going to leave this form. So in this particular instance, it's not going to save me any time because of the way that I run it. But for a demo, I don't know any other way to run it. So I'm going to have to watch the conversion process take place no matter whether I do it in the form itself or whether I do it in the process timeline. But we have a converted form. We can go ahead and take a look at it. And here is my form. I guess we can expand it. The only thing that's on this form are the form fields themselves. So there you go. That's what the form looks like when it's converted. It's not a very pretty form, and it doesn't have anything other than the form fields on it. So there's nothing to show you on form conversion other than the values of the form fields. But it did the conversion, and it did it just fine. Like I said, we could do this either inside the form itself. I'll just go ahead and complete this to end my process. So we could, of course, go to the custom task event mapping tab. We could map it here. Once again, I've chosen to do it in the process timeline. I am of two minds, and this is not an official BP Logix thing. Now, this is my thing, and I'm not your supervisor, so you decide whether you want to listen to me or not. I do things in the process timeline for a couple of reasons. Number one, I know I'm going to end up with a document, and that document's going to have to be attached. I just want to attach the document to the timeline. I'm probably going to want to do this in the timeline. Second, there is a way of doing it in a process timeline that allows me to do it asynchronously so that the end user doesn't have to wait to move on. In my case, as soon as I submit the form, it kicks off the conversion. And then, of course, immediately after the conversion is done, it shows me the form again. So this form is never going to go away because of this. However, if I do the conversion not after a user task, but after some other task, so that it's not dependent on me submitting the form to run the task, it won't cause the user to have to wait for this task to run. PDF conversions, especially if you're doing really long conversions, can take a minute or so. So you have some options. Now, I've done it here in the process timeline, and it's just a direct custom task activity in the process timeline, and the custom task is configured here. I don't necessarily have to do that. Everything that happens inside the timeline really kind of happens synchronously. So again, the form never goes away. I do have another option. What I could do in the form, instead of running the custom task directly, is I could run the run process custom task. And the run process custom task runs asynchronously. So if I go into process and I pick, run process, and I seem to have clicked something I didn't want to click there. So let's go back to process, and we'll go back here to run process, and we can add that custom task. I don't have a button on the form, so we'll just, for demonstrative purposes, we'll just do it on form creation, which would, don't worry about the event. Let's assume here, we'll pick event. So it's going to run on event, and we'll pretend that that event is a button. So if I go to run process, I can do that. And I can have a process that simply does the conversion task. And that's all it does. And so all I have to do is just pick that process. That process would be a timeline that would have just one step, which would be the custom task step to do the conversion. I can click the button, and as an end user, I can kind of forget about it because it's going to launch the process, and the process is going to run asynchronously. So once the process kicks off, I can go ahead and continue about my day and continue filling out the form and ultimately submitting it. And when the process is done, ultimately it will take the document and will ship it back up to my parent process. So that's certainly something that we can do. Similarly, in the process timeline itself, rather than running this custom task directly, I can again do a run process custom task. and do the PDF conversion as the step in that run process custom task that, or in the process that is kicked off by the run process custom task. So again, it happens asynchronously. However, you got to be a little careful about that. Let's say that this is a complex PDF. There's like 10 documents, 5 of which are really large TIFF images that are all going to have to be converted. It may take a couple of minutes to convert that document. Now, ultimately, I'm pretty confident that that document is going to get converted and it's going to get reattached to my parent process, and that'll all be great. However, it's going to take a couple of minutes for that to happen. So if I submit the form, there's still no document attached to it. And the next person might get a notification, hey, this form has been submitted, and they're really on it. They want to get their work done quick, so they open up that form. And there's no document attached to the form yet either, because that PDF conversion is happening in the background. And it's the resulting PDF document is not going to get attached to that form until that running sub-process completes, and then the attachment file is transferred back up to the parent. That might be 2, 3, 5 minutes. Who knows how long it might take, depending on how busy your system is and how many users you have. It might take a while to do that conversion, because PDF conversions are very memory intensive. So I do have the option of just using the run process custom task and then creating a process that really only has the PDF conversion custom task as a activity in it. And then I don't really have to care about, no matter what I do, I never have to sit and watch that PDF get created. But do remember, that PDF still has to get creative. It's still going to take whatever amount of time it takes to perform that conversion. And it will not be available to your users back on the main form or in the main timeline until that conversion is complete. And you don't know when that conversion is going to be complete because you've done it separately from the process timeline. So there are pros and cons to PDF conversion and how you want to do it. If you do it the way that I have, well, as we saw earlier, I'm simply going to have to wait for this to complete. Let's take a look at the configuration of this custom task very quickly. Simple custom task to configure. What is it that I want to configure first of all? So I can configure, as I've done in this case, the current form only. I don't have any other document attachments or anything else. Although if I did, I would have process references. I would uncheck current form only. And if I have process references, what do I want to do? Do I want to just do everything, all of my documents, all of my form instances? Do I only want the documents? Do I only want the forms? I have those options that allow me to determine what it is that we're going to convert to PDF. In my case, we're just going to get, well, I'm not going to save this, so I guess I don't have to, but if you pick current form only, it's only going to convert the form itself. As we saw earlier, that's really the only thing that I have, so that's the appropriate configuration for this particular conversion process. But if I did have document attachments and I wanted to discriminate between documents and forms or what have you, for example, I only wanted to convert the documents and I didn't want to convert the forms at all, then you could certainly do that simply by checking process references and checking documents, and only your documents will be converted. Obviously, if you pick all, it will convert both documents and forms. Picking current form only is functionally exactly the same as saying, show me process reference and only show me forms. Well, it's exactly the same if there's only one form one form instance that's available on this process timeline. So you do have to be careful about one thing. If I have 2 or more form instances that are associated with this process timeline, and I picked forms, it's going to convert all of those form instances, those 2 or 3. So if I only have one form in a process, and I think certainly a large majority of processes really only have one form instance that are associated with them. So if you were to pick process references and forms, it would functionally be the same as picking current form only. But of course, if you do have multiple form instances in a process, picking current form only would only convert whatever happens to be the current default form in the process timeline. The attach objects too, obviously we can attach objects to the form or the process. Our recommendation in the vast majority of cases would be to attach to the process. And then there's the output, PDF and TIFF. TIFF is something you just don't want to select unless you need very large, high resolution, uncompressed images. TIFF is an image format, and it is in fact an uncompressed image format, which means the larger the file size, or the larger the physical size of the file, the larger the actual file size is, the more space it takes up on disk. And the growth of file sizes compared to the actual physical size of the file, the actual dimensions, height and width, file size increases exponentially with physical height and width. Most of the time, when you're converting to PDF, you are converting text. Converting to text is going to be a much, much, much smaller file size than converting to TIFF, because what a TIFF will do is it will convert your text document into an uncompressed TIFF image. TIFFs are great if you need high resolution, uncompressed imagery, but if you don't, you really don't want to use them because the file sizes for your resulting PDFs are going to be, well, they won't be PDFs, they'll be TIFFs, and they'll be huge. So if you take a Word document and convert it to TIFF, you are basically converting a Word document to an image of a Word document, and that bitmap image is going to be huge. So PDF is the choice you want to make probably 999 out of 1,000 times. There is the 1 in 1,000 time when you need to convert a high quality image into a TIFF. You can do that. Just keep in mind, TIFFs take up a huge amount of memory. PDF options aren't all that important. However, and in this case, even the advanced tab here is not important. But if I did have multiple documents, I've got some options for how I want that conversion to work. Now, by default, if I have like 3 or 4 Word documents and a form, and I run convert to PDF, it is going to convert each Word document into its own PDF, and the form itself will be converted into a PDF. So if I have 4 Word documents and a form, and I run convert to PDF, and I convert both documents and forms, then with 4 Word documents and a form, I'm going to end up with 5 different PDF documents. Now, irrespective of whether I want those 5 or not, I do probably want to set a group name so that those documents that are converted to PDF go into a group name. I haven't done it here because all I'm doing is converting the form, but commonly I create a group called PDF, and all of my PDFs go into the PDF group because most of the time you're creating PDFs at the end of the process, not at the somewhere in the middle of an approval process. Most of the times you do convert to PDF at the end just to get everything converted. When you do that, there's an excellent chance that with your 4 Word documents and form, you don't actually want 5 different PDFs. What you want is one PDF that contains both the form and the 4 Word documents. So you can click this output all items to a single PDF, and that is going to open up a whole bunch of other cool properties. First of all, you're going to have to provide a file name for that document that is going to result from merging all 5 of my PDFs into a single document. So you need to come up with some sort of PDF file name. You can choose whatever you want. You can choose a, hard-coded file name, mypdfs.pdf. You could do that. But because this is a custom task and text boxes and custom tasks will usually accept system variables, you can create a custom file name using system variables that are unique for each submission, just as you would do with like a form number or a request number on the form. You could use a sequence number to come up with a special document number if you wanted. You got a lot of options there. The other options you have is how you want them organized. By default, there's a checkbox down here at the very bottom that is always checked. That group forms together. What that means is that when it creates the PDFs, the very first page, so again, if we have one form and 4 Word documents, the very first page is going to be the form itself. And the 4 Word documents will be placed on pages 2 through 5. So if I want it to work like that, and I think most of the time you do, you certainly don't want to uncheck this. The other option is, how do I want these documents ordered? Now remember, if you have group forms together, the form is always going to be the first page. So in my example, where I only have one form, that's always going to be page 1. It's always going to be the form. If I don't want the form to be page 1, I have to uncheck this box. Otherwise, it will always be page 1, and all of my sorting options, and I can sort alphabetically or by the time the document was attached or created or last updated. Usually alphabetically is what people pick, but maybe by the time the document was attached is probably a close second. That's only going to affect the documents if this is checked, because the first page will always be the forms. Now, if I have multiple forms, so let's say I have 2 forms, and I pick alphabetically, and what's going to happen is that my 2 forms are going to be pages 1 and 2, but they will be sorted, in this case, alphabetically. And then the remainder of the pages will be all of my documents, which will themselves be sorted alphabetically. None of this is necessary in my case because in this simple example, I am only throwing in the current form. So it's going to be outputted to a single PDF anyway. But Convert to PDF gives you a lot of options for how you want that PDF output. There's a lot of times when customers have old stuff, their database is getting big. This is very common with on-premise customers. And what they want to do is they just want to go back to all of their old processes and they just want to archive them. And so what they'll do is they'll take the form and all of the documents, they'll merge them into a single PDF. They'll save that PDF to somewhere on the file system, and then they can delete all of those old processes and all of the history that's associated with them. But they can have the original request forms in the documents, and they can throw them, as they're archived, they can just keep those documents in their local file system somewhere. So that's Convert to PDF. It is 10:48. I am doing an awful job of moving quickly through this. I'm going to assume that we're not going to get through all of these custom tasks today, because I, as it turns out, I have way more to say about this. I thought that being away for 3 weeks would make me a lot more terse, but apparently that hasn't happened. All right, so let's talk about the transform to PDF. This is actually a pretty simple but pretty useful thing. So here's the deal. State and federal governments and counties and cities often have documents that they want you to submit, and they're in PDF format. And what you don't want to do is have to sit down and manually open up a PDF document and fill it out, and then, save it somewhere in a folder. You want to insert those fillable PDF forms that you get from various government and non-governmental organizations, and you want to be able to fill them out and keep them with a process. Because often filling out the form is not something that you do just on a whim. There's a process that's associated with filling out and submitting the government form. It has to go through levels of approval. You want to be able to do that in Process Director like you do all of your other approvals. Thus, there is a transformed PDF custom task. It will allow us to take these government forms and fill them out by filling out Process Director, and then we can take that filled PDF and send it out. Now, my PDF isn't all that impressive. If we look in my form conversions, I actually have this form templates. So for the next two custom tasks, which is transformed PDF and transformed to Word, which we're going to cover kind of at the same time, these are my two templates. So my sample form PDF, I could have just downloaded the copy right here, couldn't I? So let's open up this PDF file. It's no great shakes. It has 4 form fields called Fields 1 through Fields 4. It's just a sample PDF form. Obviously, your government forms are going to be way more complex than that. My document form is a little bit different. Now, let me download that so we can look at that in Word. I actually have two things. I have my little form up here, but what I want to notice, what I want you to notice, or what I want to point out, is that in a PDF, I've got actual form fields. That's just how Adobe builds forms. There are real form fields. They have form field names and other properties that are accessible programmatically to allow me to, as we will in this case, convert the data from a Process Director form into a fillable PDF form. Word is not quite that simple. Now, there is a form functionality in Word. I mean, technically, I could create a Word form, and technically that Word form and the form fields themselves would be accessible via Microsoft's Visual Basic for applications, macros and what have you. That requires a lot of knowledge of Microsoft Word, and it's really tedious working with Word forms, so we just don't do that. Instead of form fields, what we've done is we've taken the less than sign and greater than signs, and we've decided that if something is a field, so here is a field, field 1, we're going to mark it as a field by using the greater and less than signs and sort of marking it out like this. So Process Director will look at this document. It's really easy to read the text of a document. And it's really easy to say, hey, I've got these two characters here, because you would never use them, I don't think, in any other context. I mean, even if you did use a greater than or less than sign, unless it was a mistake, you wouldn't use two of them back to back. So it's a pretty safe bet that if I see these two less than signs, I know they have other names. I never can remember what that other name is. So I'm just going to call them less than and greater than. So it's going to see these two less than signs and it's going to go, oh, there must be a field. So I'm going to read all of this text right up until I hit here. And then I'm going to go, oh, wait a second, there's a greater than sign there. In fact, there's two of them together. So that must mean that this is the field. So this is the field that I'm going to need to replace. So all of this together creates a form field, and we just do it in text. It's the simplest way of doing it. Now, there is an advantage to this. If I have, and I have worked at companies where a lot of their, sort of their local company forms were all done in Word. You'd have to like open them in Word, and you'd have to, and they're in tables, right? And you'd have to go into each field and fill out the values. I mean, heck, we still have a couple of forms here at BP Logix that we use that are like that. Like, we're going through our annual review process, and it's all done in a Word document in a table, and you got to fill out table cells. That's very common. Well, if you have this form and it has a specific design and what have you that you've worked on, well, you can just take and put those fields in like that, just via text, and you can fill out that form. Similarly, you could also use this to do what we've done down here. I just kind of added this in as an extra, which is basically just writing a letter. We can use this as a mail merge in Word, which is also pretty cool. So it goes just beyond filling out forms. We can actually fill out letters and use Process Director as a letter generation system as well. So the transform to PDF and transform to Word are pretty powerful custom tasks. So those are my two templates. Now I've got to have these templates. They do need to exist in the content list so that whenever my process runs, I know exactly where the template is that I need to take my form fields out of the document and place them into the PDF. So we'll just run both of these real quick and we'll just watch them work. So we'll start off with the transform to PDF. We'll run that. And we'll add in some field values. And okay, here, I'll sign my name. There we go. That's not my signature, but we'll pretend it is. And we'll hit submit. And once again, we are doing a PDF conversion here, so we are going to have to wait. And happily, the Word thing goes a lot faster than PDF conversion. PDF conversion is a little bit of a pain. But here is my converted PDF. I can view it, and I can view it inline. I don't even know why I have that signature control there. I should probably take that out because I didn't stick it here on the form itself. I could have, I just didn't because we have another custom task that would actually run that. So for this demonstration, it's not really relevant. What is relevant is that my field values have been transferred from field 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the appropriate fields on the PDF document. And similarly, if we run the transform to Word form, same thing will happen. We run the form, we fill it out, and submit it. And it will pull the Word document. I actually expected it to work much faster than that, but there we go. There is our Word document. Obviously, because it's Word, we can't view it in the browser. We're going to have to open it in Microsoft Word. But there we go. All of my values have been filled out in the form. It looks like I need to do some font work because it looks like I changed that font where I shouldn't have. But other than that, everything is fine. It wrote my letter. It filled out my form. We're all happy with it. These two custom tasks are very, very similar in how they are configured. So let's open up our convert to Word. Then we'll look at convert to PDF. Like I said, they're very, very similar. Once again, I'm running these in the process timeline. And that's probably going to, no, came up pretty fast actually. In fact, let's look at both of these side by side. So let me move that over for a second. Let me go to my transform. Oops. We want to go to our transform to PDF timeline, and we'll look at that custom task. And we're looking at them side by side because they're pretty similar. Although this is the older style, that needs to be updated to the new, more modern look. But I'm basically doing the same thing. First thing I have to do is pick a template file. Now for Word documents, it is a little trickier. I have a couple of extra possibilities. But in general, for the PDF form conversion, we are going to pull that form off of the content list. And so my template file is actually specified with a content picker that allows me to click on it, find that sample PDF form in the content list, and run it out of the content list directly. With a Word document, it is a little more complex because we're not going to assume that the Word document is solely available inside the content list. Now, if it is a content object, which is probably the easiest way of doing this, then fine. We still have our user picker. We can still click on it, or not user picker, but content picker. We can still click on it and we can pull it out of the form contents directory as well. But we do have the ability of pulling it out of a form control. There is no form control to use here because the form control that I would want to use would be a show attach control. Or we can just pull it references. We can just grab a Word document that is used as an attachment as a process or a form reference. We can pull that out as well. In most cases, it's going to be content objects. So as a practical matter, the configuration for both of these are going to be exactly the same. When it comes down to the mappings, they're going to work pretty much exactly the same. Once you have picked a document template, whether it is a PDF, you've got refresh PDF field list. If it's a Word document, you've got refresh document fields. You're going to click that and it's going to evaluate your document and pull the names of all of the fields in that document. Now, in both of my documents, I imaginatively named the fields field 1 through field 4. So they're exactly the same in both documents. You're going to need to do this though, because it does fill these drop downs to provide you with the fields so that you can map well, actually it's the PDF field that it maps. Sorry about that. But you need to fill out both the PDF field and the form field in the Word document so that you can attach these fields or map these fields to the fields that are on the process director form. On the process director form, I've called them fields 1 through field 4 as well. So the names are pretty much the same in both the PDF file and in the process director form, but I can just map all of my forms from the process director form to the fields that exist in the document, whether they're the regular PDF fillable form fields or the text marked fields that we have in the Word document. And then finally at the bottom, we have to just figure out how we want to save this output object, which is going to be created. It's obviously going to make a copy of the PDF or a copy of the Word document that has replaced the fields with the values from the process director form. We have to decide whether we're going to attach that object as a process or a form reference. We always recommend process references, and then give it an output name. I've given them both the same name, converted.pdf and converted.docx, and they're both going into the same form group, or the same group name, which is the form group, and that is how they are being shown on the control for the attach control, the show attach control. In both documents, it's showing me the object that is in the form group. So both of these are very, very, very similar. The real differences to them are not so much in the configuration, but in the case of the Word document, the fact that we have to build those text fields inside the Word template, whereas in a PDF, those fields already exist. So that's a transform to PDF and the transform to Word custom tasks. So now let's talk about the copy form data custom task. So I have an original form, and I also have a new form. I'm going to use both of these forms in my process timeline. This is not uncommon. There may be times when I have a form that is used to make the initial request, a different form that is used during the approval process, and then I might switch back to the original form. Now, if I'm going to use them in the same process, I actually have a couple of shortcuts that I can use. that may mean I don't need to use copy form data specifically. In every form, for every form field, we'll just go to the Form Controls tab here really quickly. I have the ability to synchronize forms that are in the same process. So if I have a field like last name, and I want to ensure that I only have to put the last name in one form, and then I can just replicate it everywhere else, there is a synchronize field within process property. So on the form where I want to supply the value of the last name, or input one in this case, then I would open up my original form. This is the form I'm going to submit. And I would click the synchronize field within process. Any other form that gets included in the process that has, input one as the field name will automatically inherit whatever value I placed in the original form. You have to be very careful when you use this. You have to ensure that there is only one form that is the source form, and only one form where this checkbox is clicked. Because if I have two forms in the same process, both of which are named input one, and I click this checkbox in both forms, things may go awry in ways that you don't like. Because what this will enable users to do is basically, well, it makes the synchronization impossible because it doesn't know which is the canonical version. And if I change one, it's going to change the other, or it may not change the other. I think there are some real vagaries about how this works. If you have two fields with the same name where you have checked this box. This box gets checked in one field and one field only. So if I had 5 forms and I wanted to take this input one and replicate it to all the other 4 forms, I could certainly do that. I could take my original form, I could open it up and say, synchronize this field within process. I have to make a couple assumptions when we do that. One of the assumptions is that this original form will be the first form that is opened up by a user. It will be the one that is initially submitted, the one that will kick off the process, and so therefore can serve as the source form for any of this synchronized data. One practice you may want to think about is if I'm synchronizing this field, so again, we're saying input one, this is the field I'm synchronizing. Maybe in all of the other forms that have an input one, what I might want to think about doing is disabling those fields so that users can't change them at all. Once I enter the value in input one on the original form, I really only want to display or echo it on all of the other forms, and I don't want to allow anybody to edit those other forms. I mean, sure, they might edit those forms. It would be pointless because this one field here, if we've got synchronized field checked, it will overwrite anything you do in those other forms if they're synchronized with this field. So this is a great quick shortcut for just taking one piece of data in one form and throwing it out to all of the other forms. That's great, but due to the constraints I've talked about, it may not be what you want to do. You may want to just use the copy form CT to make this happen. So what I have in this case, and I'm going to be sure I don't save anything. We'll just take my original form. We'll run it. So here's a form field that I want copied. And then I've got this field that I don't want to copy. BB. I'm going to go ahead and submit this form. And now, as you can see, I am on a different form. My AAA field is still here, but now I have this new field that does not have a value that I can just go ahead and put this value in. And again, like I said, I'm on a different form, and now I've reviewed the different form, and it's going to go away. And so I had my original form, and then I had my different form. The appropriate data was copied from each. We did that with the copy form data custom task. This is one of those custom tasks where this set container form, where it says optional, isn't. You're going to need to set that container form because this is going to be the source form for your data. Technically, you could run the copy form data without setting a container form. It just wouldn't let you copy anything. So in many cases, set container form is optional. In the case of copy form data, it's not optional. So we have to set our container form, and this is our original form. So this is the form from whence we are going to copy the data. To configure this custom task, first thing we have to do at the very top is we have to specify the new form to create. This is a content list picker. Obviously, we're going to go into our application. We're going to pick the new form. Once we do that, we've got to decide how we're going to add that new instance. We're going to add it as a timeline reference. Obviously, we are going to make this a separate timeline item on the form. And then we have to decide if we're going to attach any of the attachments to it. Now, I've done it real simple. I've just said we're going to attach everything. And so whatever document attachments are on the original form, there aren't any, would get transferred over to this second form, the form to create, which I apparently messed up. So we'll cancel our changes and reopen this. There we go. The new form, that was the form. There were no attachments, so there's nothing that's going to be sent over to the new form. Down at the very bottom is the important part. That is the mapping. Now, I've only got 2 fields on each form, and I'm only copying 1. So the reason that I need a container form, so the reason why I said that setting the container form up here wasn't optional, is because I am actually going to have to know what my container form is so that I know what my source form control is going to be. So in this case, I'm wanting to set the value of input 1 in the destination form control to the value of input 1 in the source form control. And I just want to transfer those 2 values directly across. This mapping does allow me to either add only a couple of fields or only 1 field, as I've done here. You can map all of the fields. It doesn't really matter. You can map whatever you want to map, and whatever you decide to map, it will just map from one form to the other. Now, the way that I actually made this work when I mapped to the second form so that I could see the second form is this activity 2. Activity 2 is a form actions custom task. And so what I did is I specified that the new form is set as the default instance for this timeline. So initially, the timeline was started when I submitted the original form. That was the default form instance for the timeline. It did the conversion from my original form to the new form. And from now on, I only want to see new form as the default form instance. So I need to run a form actions custom task so that that happens, so that I can set new form as my default form, so that when the review step runs up, I'm looking at a different form than the original form. So I have to run both of these things together. Most commonly, you're going to run the copy form whenever you kick off a sub process. Usually, whenever you kick off a sub process from the main process, as you can see here in the options, and this is true whether you are running the process timeline activity or whether you invoke the run process custom task and call a process from that custom task. the same options are going to apply, which is these four options here. A, am I going to copy objects from the timeline package to its parent? And B, am I going to copy objects from the parent process down to the child process? So whether this is the child process that we're starting or the parent process, obviously, we want to check these so that it copies all of the objects from the parent to the child and then back up from the child to the parent. So far, so good. And if we go into let me just create another activity here down here at the bottom. And let's look at the run process a little bit closer here. Well, let's do process here first. Process, where is it? Right there. So if we go to the process tab, I'm copying. So I'm going to create a sub process. I'm going to specify what sub process I'm going to create. And so those two checkboxes are important because I want to copy objects from the sub process back up to the parent process, and I want to copy objects from this timeline package down to the child process. You generally want to do that by default. You have something very similar if you were to create this as a, oops, missed it, custom task, and we were to go into custom task, and we were to go into process and run process. There it is. And we were to add that custom task and go into its configuration. I have, where is it? I know that is down here somewhere. I just don't remember where it is. Let me find well, that's support. Copy form data, completed, say timeline. We'll kick that off. And well, we also got to set up the new form that we want to create with it, which is new form. Sorry, this is getting, I thought it'd be easy just to talk my way through this, but it is a little more complicated. Filling all of the stuff out. Options don't show up a lot of times until you fill out the appropriate fields for them. That's array binding. That's advanced. Launch processes current user. Set form, default form. Okay. I was sure that those properties were in here. Oh, there we go. It's done separately. So I'm going to have to do the attachments. So if I'm going to attach the form, I have to do that. And for the attach items, I have to attach them to either the newly launched process or the form. I got to do it a little bit separately here whenever I kick off the run process. So it's going to kick off my run process. It's going to make my new form, and it's going to have my new process. And once I've got this set up and it gets all of my stuff from the parent process down to the child process, then in the child process, I am going to create first thing I'm going to do is create my copy form, because I need to take the data that is in that parent form and I need to copy it over into the child form. And so that's when I would run the copy form data there. And by the way, in that child process, when it runs, that's when I would go into the options here to be sure that I'm copying the objects from the timeline package back to the parent and copy objects from the parent to this timeline. So it's a little confusing as to where you do that. And even I get confused with some of the stuff that, honestly, I don't do every day. But That's often when you'd run the copy form data. I've created a sub process. I've kicked it off in the launch process. The very first thing that I want to do is do a copy form data for the new data. I actually had a an example of that, and I'm not sure whether I've lost it or not. Um, and I think it's here in specialist in my archive. And this used to be the old training project that I had. And let's go into processes. And I have this PRPO process. Now, I did this way back in 2015 or so. So I still used a workflow to do this. But I would just point out that for my workflow, the very first step in that workflow was copy form data, which is basically the same custom task, where I just took my purchase request form and I created a purchase order form. And to do that, I set it as a sub process to create my purchase order form, basically because I wanted to do that. I think I made a PDF out of it and shipped it back up to the parent process. And I wanted all of that to happen asynchronously, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, with the convert to PDF. So in this case, I'm kind of doing both things. And the first thing I need to do when I kick off this sub process, which in this case happens to be a workflow, is I need to run this copy form data because I need to take the data out of my purchase request form, and I need to fill out my new purchase order form by throwing in the purchase request total, the shipping values, and other values. That creates my purchase order. And the purchase order, of course, would be what I would send to the customer. Once the purchase order has been created, the purchase order form is created, I've copied the data from the purchase order form, then I convert it to PDF, and the PDF conversion happens. And once that is done, then if we go back and look at our leave, and look back at our purchase request. Nope, it's not the form I want to look at. It is the process. So if we go back to our processes and look at our PRPO process. So once my PO process is done, I have this generate PO step, and that generate PO step is the step that calls the process and that does my generate PO step, sends all of my documents down to it so that it allows me to generate the purchase order, attach all those documents to the purchase order, convert it to PDF, and send it back up here. And it just happens as in this case, it's synchronous. I didn't call it asynchronously, but because I actually did the process step rather than doing the launch process custom task. But essentially, it's the same thing. I'm calling this off in a sub process, and I want my conversions and everything to happen in the sub process. And the first step of that sub process is doing the copy form data custom task to copy that data back over to where it is supposed to be. All right, so let's go back in. And that was copy form data. What time is it? It is 11:23. We're trying to power through here. We're going to make it more than halfway through. So here is the fill drop down with form data custom task. This is kind of a limited use one, but it is sort of cool to be able to use. We'll just run this form. Now, in this case, everything is done inside the form. In fact, it would have to be done inside the form. This is a form. This is literally a form custom task. So in my initial state, I have a drop down. It is empty. Hitting fill because I have a value up here, adds a blank row. Okay. What's going on here? Well, let's do this. Let's add a couple of rows. And now let's hit fill. And now I have a drop-down that is filled. What this custom task does is it allows me to take the values that are in an array and to fill a drop-down from values that are in an array. This is actually surprisingly useful because there are a lot of times whenever you have an array field, you're often a list of events, and you want to make a special note about a list of event, and you want to pick that event as the note. Well, this allows you to do that because now everything that is in this array, and it just happens to be this field in the array, now gets put into a dropdown that exists outside the array that allows me to choose an item. And once that item is chosen, I can make notes about that particular item. It's pretty convenient. And we have several customers who have set this up so that they can fill out an array. The array is often not even manually filled out. The array is often filled out when the form is opened, based on some external data, and they want to have that dropdown filled based on the data that enters that array. And this may change over time in the array. The initial data may be an approximation, and then they open up the form and they can go in and they can make changes in the form. And as you make changes in the form, like in this case, we've just decided to add a new row, then great, I can fill my dropdown so that as I update my array, the values in my dropdown also change. So let's go to the custom task event mapping tab here. I have that fill button, which you've seen me click to fill the values for the options in the array. Here's the custom task. It is super simple to set up. First of all, you have to choose the array that or choose the drop-down control that you are going to fill from the array. You're going to provide a prompt. I always provide, select one in square brackets. And what is the source for this data? Now, it could be attachments, but in this case, it comes off the form itself. And this is the most common use. The attachments thing gets really complicated, and it's largely been deprecated by the fact that fill fields from Excel exists, so I don't really need to worry about that. What I really do need to worry about are form data, and I have an array. And this dropdown allows me to choose the array field to use as the source for both the entry text, which is what end users will see, and the entry value, which is any separate value that gets stored. As we talk about quite often, dropdowns can have a separate display text and value. In this case, they don't. They're the same thing. But it's a really simple custom task to set up to be able to take array data and then create a dropdown that pulls that array data. In this case, it pulls it out of the exact same form, so it's real simple to set up. Now, I mentioned fill fields from Excel. So let's take a look at that, because now I'm going to do something a little bit different. Oh, that's where I need to be. There's my form. We're going to run my form. Now, as it happens, I do want to show you something that's kind of cool about this, but I'll show it to you in a minute. I'm going to upload a document, and I have a real simple Excel spreadsheet right here on my desktop called Book One, and I'm going to upload it. And so we're not even going to look at it yet. We're just going to go ahead and submit my form. There we go. It submitted my form. It uploaded the document. The document got attached, and I clicked the button to finish that review task that was set in there. And now I've got data in an array. And if I hit do it again, it'll add more data. I probably should have configured this better so that it didn't append to the data, but I can just keep appending the data. It's the same data all the time. Okay, great. So we'll complete the task. So what is this data? Where did it come from? Well, I pulled it off my desktop. I slapped it together this morning. Um, Browse desktop. Well, I don't know why it didn't just show up in my items, but this is it. This is my Excel spreadsheet. It's super impressive. Just has two headers, and then it has some data. Now, the nice thing about this is the way that this custom task works, it doesn't care what data is in your Excel spreadsheet. So that is the spreadsheet that I made this morning. I could make another spreadsheet, and in fact will, just willy-nilly, and it'll work as well. And it'll work because of the way this custom task is configured. So the fill fields from Excel will take an Excel attachment and we'll take the data that is in that Excel attachment and we'll just throw it into a form. Now, there are some limitations for how this works. If you have multiple spreadsheets, it's going to pull from whatever the default worksheet is in that Excel spreadsheet. So if you have a spreadsheet that has multiple worksheets, it's going to take whatever the default active worksheet is, and that's where it's going to pull the data from. So it doesn't go in and grab, I mean, it's very limited here in terms of our properties, right? So it doesn't go in and grab all of that data that might be in worksheet 5. It doesn't allow you to pick what rows the data starts in or anything like that. Well, it kind of does. You have one checkbox. Does my data have headers or not? If you check data has headers, it will ignore the first row of the worksheet. If you uncheck it, it will include the first row of the worksheet as data. So if your data has headers, keep that checked. All it does is it allows you, in this case, this form has an array. So I have array fields. I have two of them, input 1 and input 2. So those are my two array fields. And all I have to do is specify what column the data will come from to fill each of these array fields. And it will automatically bind the data to my spreadsheet. Now, what I've done, I have other ways of doing this. You can have a spreadsheet as a content object in the content list. Most of the time, you're going to pick references and you're going to attach the spreadsheet as a document. And the nice thing about this is that because I'm looking at columns here, I don't care what data is in the spreadsheet. So we have my book 1 that I created earlier today before the webinar. Okay, yeah, that's great. Let's go back to Excel. And let me move this over here so that we can see what I'm doing in Excel. I'm just going to open up a blank workbook, and I'm just going to call this a field. And I'm going to call this another field. And we'll just go, oh, there we go. I just made a spreadsheet. Let's save it. So we'll just, it always wants to save it to, oh, I don't want to save it as book 1. So let's call it book 2, I guess. And I don't want to save it there. More options. It always wants to save it to a shared folder. I do not want that to happen. I just want to go to the desktop. So we called the old one book 1. We'll call this book Z. and we'll save it. So there we go. There's my spreadsheet. I'm just, making this stuff up as I go along. And now we'll run the form. We'll upload book Z. And we'll hit OK. All right, there we go. We'll submit our form. Review it, be sure I've got everything I'm supposed to have there. We'll hit complete. And there's my data from book Z. The field names aren't the same. The data is not the same. Nothing is the same except for the fact that I'm pulling data from column A and column B of my spreadsheet. So the cool thing about the import data from Excel is that it doesn't really care much about the structure of your data or field names. It doesn't have to parse through any of that. All you have to do is say, I want an array. I want to fill an array from an Excel spreadsheet. And you can just allow people to upload whatever Excel spreadsheet they want to upload. Now, obviously, I'm picking specific columns, in this case, column A and column B. So if they don't have a column B, there simply won't be any data to import. If they don't have anything in column A, but they do have something in column B, there won't be anything in column A to import. So we're going to assume that people are uploading similar Excel spreadsheets and that they aren't uploading real complex one. We have to have some sort of idea of what it is that people will be uploading. Beyond that, this setup is pretty agnostic about what's in that Excel spreadsheet. As long as it can grab column A and column B, it's going to fill them out, and it's going to fill out the fields in that array. It's going to bind them to that data, and it's all going to take place sort of behind the scenes. As soon as you upload that Excel spreadsheet, as soon as the CT runs, it's going to know what to do with that CT. Speaking of arrays, the next important custom task is manipulate array data. Again, we're running this straight out of the form, and this is one of those things that you probably are gonna want to run out of the form and not run out of the process timeline. And in this case, there is no process timeline. I do have a business value that's providing me some data. This is just providing the data that's going to fill out the data on the array form, because my form does have an array. And once I open the form, it is filled with data. So I've got two columns in my data. I've got the name of some companies, and I've got the industries that they're in. So with the manipulate array data, there are different things that I can do. For example, I can sort my array. So in this particular case, by sorting it, I have sorted it by column B here, not by column A. And so you can see the industries are all together. I can remove some data. For example, I have an industry called music. If I don't want these two items in my array, I can click remove music and they're gone. I can append data to the array. This is different, by the way, than notice there's no button on this form. There's no array button to add a new array row. Doesn't exist. If I want to add new data, then I need to add it here and click the append button. Process Director will automatically go in and do the array manipulation that is needed to add Apex. And then, of course, obviously, I have to give it an industry. We'll call it music since I don't have any music. I can copy an array. I can click right there on copy an array, and it will copy that array. And the way I've got it configured, I can copy this array 1,000,000 times. Not sure I'd want to do that, but I certainly could. And every time I copied it, it is going to reflect the array as it currently exists when I hit the copy button. So I'm doing several things here. Sorting my array. I'm removing data from the array that meets a specific condition. I'm appending data to the array. I'm copying the array at the top to a different array on the form. And I'm using the same custom task to perform all of these manipulations. Let's go to the form definition and look at that custom task. Now, doing four things. I'm sorting, appending, removing, and copying array data. And those are the four primary tasks that are done in the manipulate array data CT. Now, I have four different buttons, so I'm going to have to call the manipulate array data task four different times based on which button that I click. But because I have them based on four different buttons, they each have their own events, and so they're sort of mutually exclusive as when they'll happen. So I don't have to worry about any extra conditions. They're all running on different events, so I'm happy with that. So there are four different configurations that we're going to need to do with this. So we'll start off with this specific one, which is the sorting. Yes, this is the sorting one. So I'm not doing any copying data, so I don't care about that. Now I do care about the array. So I do need to use the correct array. So I have array start as my primary array. That's the one we're going to sort. And so I have to pick that. But we're not doing anything for copying, so we don't care. We don't care about removal, and we don't care about this copying between arrays. So all I care about is this sorting column. Now I have two columns in my array. I have a field name company and a field name industry. So I am going to sort on industry. By default, it will sort ascending. The checkbox here says sort in reverse order. I hate it. It should say sort descending instead of sort reverse order. What is reverse order? Doesn't make sense. Ascending and descending do. Maybe that's because I'm a former software engineer, and so it makes more sense to me. But those are the only two things I have to care about here. Now I'm going to configure a different area on this, on the append control. So when it says a copy array data from form control, I don't think that's a great title because we're not actually copying. We are copying data from a non-array control to a new array row. I don't know that this text tells me that. And I'm not sure there's any brief text that does. But here's what I'm doing. I'm taking data from a non-array control, and whatever it is, I'm sticking it into a new row in the array, and I'm just appending it to an array. And maybe this should actually be called append array data. Copy array data from form control, I think misleads me about what this does. But in any event, language grammar critique aside, I have a new company field. It is a non-array field. It's just a normal text box. That's where my data is going to come from. And I want to stick that in the company field of the array. Now, I do have some choices here. I have appending, prepending, and overriding. Now, I put it in appending, but if I make this change here to prepending, and we're going to have to update and run, and I add that, notice it went up to the very, very top. So prepending will add it to row 1, and it will move all of the existing items in the array down to row 2. If we go in and put overwriting and we update and run our form again, and once again, we'll just do an A and we'll hit append. It took our very first row. And I don't know what was in there, but I know what's in there now because it erased that first row with the data that I placed in the new company thing. So it's not just appending, but it's not just copying. There's a whole bunch going on here where I can append or I can prepend or I can overwrite the first record. I don't know how you explain that real briefly here with this text that I dislike, but that's all you have to configure to make that happen. Down on the remove row, we'll configure that. And of course, now I do like removal as the title for this section. This seems very descriptive. And all we're going to do is remove, well, we're going to remove a row that meets a condition. Now, some conditions are already built in. Is the row an exact duplicate of a previous row? Do the columns in the row match a previous row when they're sorted? Do specified columns in the row match a previous row? So if I say I want to delete everything in the, if I sort the industry column, and I have 3 musics. As soon as I hit one music, that's fine, but I want to get rid of the other 2 musics because they matched a previous row. And so I'd end up with 1 music in my array. Or if specified columns in the row match a previous row. So I'd have to specify a column where if the column in that row matched a previous row, it would be deleted. Or I can do what I did and just create my own particular custom condition, which is probably what you would do in most cases, I should think, where I said if the industry equals music, I want you to remove the row if it meets those conditions. By the way, I can have multiple conditions. So I can add a fairly complex condition set here, and I can, if I have multiple conditions, decide whether I want to remove a row that meets all conditions or remove a row that meets any of the conditions I specify. So I've got a lot of ways of getting rows out of that document. Now, as we saw, what I've set it up to do is just to remove all of the items that say music, and we'll just get rid of all of them. And finally, we have our copy. And that's where we are finally down here at the copying section, where we have 2 arrays on a form. I want to grab the data out of array 1, my original array, and I want to stick it in array 2. So basically, I want to duplicate that data in a second array. So I have company 2 and industry 2 as columns in array 2. And I obviously have mapped them to company and industry in my original array. And my copy button will just copy them. Now, a minute ago, what we did was I clicked the copy button several times and it just kept copying my data into array 2. But I'm going to check that clear rows in the destination array before copying. And we're going to update and run. And now we're going to copy our array. Okay, great. We'll hit it again. It didn't change. Well, actually it did. We just didn't see it changed because it got replaced by the same stuff. But what happens if we go here and we remove music? So now there's only tools, health, computers, books, etc. Okay, now we'll hit copy array. We have a much shorter array now. So I can actually copy the current state of the array. And by checking that checkbox that I just checked, instead of appending every time I hit the copy button, what it's doing is it's replacing whatever is in the bottom array. So we can add our New company here, BBBBB. I didn't change the append, did I? So it's not adding new rows. Okay, well, we'll copy the array. And now it just copies it in its current state. So you got a lot of things that you can do with the manipulate array data. It's a really cool custom task. And anytime that you're working with arrays and you need to do sorting or removals or copying, it really is the go-to custom task to use for arrays. That, I believe, covers everything we need to cover, because number 7, it's still form related, but it's about using Excel, importing Excel into the internal user database and using that. It's not really custom task related. I just happened to have stuck it in there because I couldn't think of another place to place it. But for the form custom tasks, I think that's it. And I managed to get us out of here even 10 minutes early. So I guess I was able to plan it. If I'd had to rebuild all that stuff from scratch, we'd still be in halfway through. But we're done. Welcome back to the training webinar. Hope everybody had a great holiday. Welcome to 2025. Let's see how this one goes. Have a great week. We'll talk to you on Tuesday for the Spotlight webinar, if you show up. And otherwise, I'll see you on next Thursday. So long.